All right, Jason Ruona here. Today we're in Ham Lake, Minnesota. We're here with Everett Jasmer from USA-1 4x4 in Everett. We're standing by your original here, the 1970 Chevy. Talk to us about what we're doing here today, and we kind of dropped and showed you a brand new project we're working on here.
Well, we're looking at, and I'm seeing for the first time, the new JConcepts USA-1 70 body with the new graphics package, and very excited. It's probably the best looking graphics package I've seen in a long time on any replica or recreation of the USA-1 truck, and that body with the flares and all the details is incredible.
So we worked with you quite a bit on these decals here, and this, obviously we got the truck behind us, and people, we talked about this earlier. It's not just a white truck. This is a pearl paint job on this truck, and it's hard to replicate that in RC, but you got that here on the real truck. But you have a really elaborate decal and paint package on this truck, and just quickly talk to us about how much work here we have in the real truck on the paint style and the paint design, the logo design, and then kind of replicating that here on the RC.
Well, the USA-1 graphics have been on the USA-1 truck since about 1983, I believe it was, if I'm not mistaken, when we went from the original blue paint scheme to the pearl paint scheme. And the pearl is just a culmination of color design that I like. I didn't care much for white, but I like pearl, and so we went with a blue pearl. Brought back a little of the historic blue color at the same time. And the graphics, long story on that, but the original graphics on this truck were done by Dan Patterson, same fellow out of St. Louis that did the early Bigfoot stuff. One of the few guys back in those days that could give us this type of airbrush work. So this is all the original graphics on here, going way back to the early 80s, and have been replicated extremely well by Jason here at JConcepts with the new USA-1 body.
So we wanted to work, with Everett here, of course, being, monster truck fans. We were able to work something here where we could, combine the body of the 1970 Chevy with the USA-1, the licensed and the trademarked ideas and entities here of this vehicle. And, there's a lot of individual things you wanted to incorporate into these decals. We talked about them quite a bit. We were talking about the reds, the colors, the fades.
Yep.
We even went through and added some things on the back that were important to you, and maybe you can explain some of the details on that.
Well, a lot of times the decals have done on toys, models, different things are just plain red, and on the real truck it's a deep brandy colored red in the stripes, and it has a lot of fading, showing the darkening and lightening at some points as it rolls across the body. So we got the color very, very close, and the tailgate, there was some fine details on there, the Chevrolet signage painted by Dan, and as well as some small lettering up in the upper left-hand corner of the tailgate, acknowledging well, my wife, for the time that she gave up back then. Of course, 40 years later, she's given up a lot more time, but I think Rod Litzau's on there as the painter. He later became the driver of the later USA-1 race truck. Just little personal touches that have never been done before, that they've done a very good job on this model.
So, the idea here is to, this is a 10.5 to 10 3/4 inch wheelbase body, which is for the Clod Buster based chassis. This is our regulator conversion kit on the Clod Buster, but it's the same basic wheelbase that we went with, and the size of the body, we've kind of scaled it to that size chassis. And then the decals, of course, we went through, and like we said, we worked a lot with Everett on the decals themselves to get the details and everything we wanted, and that's going to come included with the body, so they can paint it, the white or the pearl, whatever they think that it looks best with. Put the decals on, and these are the air release style decals. So when you lay the decals on, the air releases underneath, so you don't get all the bubbles and all that kind of stuff that's so difficult in doing decals. So Everett, we're gonna talk a little bit about the real truck here. We're gonna set this guy down.
Sure.
But a unique feature on this truck is it has a tilt body.
Yep.
So Quickly, let's talk about how you're able to sit in the driver's seat and tilt the body up on this thing.
Well, if you are old enough to have followed monster trucks since the beginning, or if not, the one thing about monster trucks is that the first generation of monster trucks, of which there was commonly not thought of as 4, all had tilt front ends on them. And I wanted to do something different, so I decided to tilt the whole body. I came out of drag racing, so I liked funny cars, so I thought I'm going to make a tilt body. And so I, back in 81, whatever, I forget, when it was still on 48-inch tires, over the winter, one winter, I decided to start cutting. And I wanted the seat and the floor to stay down, so I cut all around the floor, and then when I got into the firewall, I reached a point where the firewall is about 3 or 4 layers thick and you can't get at it all, and I reached a point where I was cutting things apart where I thought I might have destroyed my truck because it was looking like it was going to be impossible, but I finally made it. But all in all, I made the whole. I had to build a subframe under the body, a separate frame from the frame of the truck, and a cage through the cab and out to the front end, and tie that all together, and then put a hydraulic system of rams underneath to lift that. And so the whole body lifts as one piece, tilts up as one piece with hydraulic rams, and the floor and the seats stay down. It's a unique design, but to me, I wanted to do something one step better than a tilt front end.
And that's something that's really iconic with this truck is you would come out during these shows and have the body tipping up on here. And like you said, it really stuck out as being different and different than the other ones. One of the reasons you went to the pearl paint job was to stick out. We talked about the first 4 trucks all being blue.
Yep.
You wanted to change it up to stand out.
Yep.
The flip top, the pearl body. Another thing that was so iconic with this truck and some other trucks from the day but came from you was the aluminum wheels, right?
Yep.
And we got the aluminum wheels on here, and talk to us a little bit about the aluminum wheels.
Well, it's just like everything else I've done since I started this business, I like to do things different than everybody else. So whether it was the tilt body instead of a tilt front end, or whether everybody else, when we went to the 66-inch tires, had just the big steel white painted agricultural tires, or wheels I should say. And as I was getting ready to put the 66s on here, I decided I wanted something better, so I went to a gentleman by the name of Roger Weissong, who was making lightweight aluminum wheels for pull tractors and trucks out of Ohio, and went to him and asked him if thought he could make a wheel the size needed for these big 66-inch tires. And at first he said he didn't think so, but eventually he said, well, I can make anything if they got the money. So I had to pay him to make all the tooling to make the wheels with. And then once we got that far, then I told Bob Chandler what I was doing, and he requested the second and third sets of wheels. And so eventually I was having the wheels made, the structure of the wheels rolled, the aluminum rolled, and then I would bring them back here to the shop and do all the machine work, drill all the holes and bolt them together. And then I would, of course, the first set is on this truck, and the second, third set, and probably fourth and fifth set went to Bob Chandler with all his trucks. And a few other people around the country bought them, but this was just another thing. I didn't want the same plain old steel wheels as everybody else, so I made the aluminum wheels.
One of the other things, that everyone likes to talk about, obviously a Chevrolet truck, what kind of engine we got in here. Everyone likes to talk about power and horsepower. What kind of engine we got in here, and what's been powering this thing through all the years?
Well, it started out, once again, trying to be different. Bob had the 460, blown 460 Ford. I think the other trucks had or one of them had a 454 Chevy blown. I don't remember what the other one was, but I wanted to be different again. And I hunted down an old Chevy Can-Am racing block from the Can-Am racing days, which had a bigger bore, and I put a longer stroke and a bigger bore in it and made a 513 cubic inch all aluminum Chevy engine, which was really radical for the early 80s there. And then as we got into the mid 80s and started running them in the mud and putting nitrous to them, that block wasn't strong enough, so then we went to the steel, what Chevrolet called a marine block, a tall deck block that we could bore and stroke and make bigger cubic inches. And so I put a 540 cubic inch, which is still in this truck. And ironically, just because I had started out with the first aluminum engine truck, ever since then my engines have been painted silver, so they kind of look like aluminum, but they do have aluminum heads, but the blocks are steel.
All right, Everett, we talked about the 70 Chevy. We got the new body here from JConcepts, and we got this thing decaled up. We went through that. We want to talk a little bit about the 88 racing, how you got into that, and you know, it's a long story, but tell us the quick, short version of building that 88 truck and winning that first national championship.
Well, the 88 was first conceived early in 87 when Chevrolet was going to do an early release on the new 88 body style. And they came to me in the winter of 86, 87, early 87, and they were planning on releasing the 88 body style in April or something like that of 87 instead of in the fall of 87. And they asked me if I'd build a new USA-1. They had been supporting me with the 70, and they asked if I'd build a new 88 USA-1, and of course I said yes. So they started shipping me parts, and we started building right away in March, April of 87. And my vision at that time, there was no racing series yet, but I started building that one as what I thought would be the first generation of race trucks. And I started building more suspension. The early trucks like the 70 and all the early monster trucks weren't really designed with much suspension in them. They were very heavy, stiff lumber wagons, you might call them. So I started building that truck with my idea of what a race truck should be: longer springs, more travel, longer shocks, more shock travel. But it was still the steel body truck, steel frame truck, leaf spring, leaf spring and shock absorber suspension. So I finished it I was finishing it up in November, December of 87, and there still was no racing season on the horizon, which was disappointing to me because I planned on going racing. And none of the promoters had started a racing series yet. So then in December, as I was wrapping it up, Chevrolet came to me and asked if they could contract with me to use the 88 USA-1 truck in the new car auto shows in January through March around the nation. And I didn't have a use for it yet. There was no racing series, so I contracted with them probably November, December to use the truck for their purposes. And shortly thereafter, TNT Motorsports announced a racing series starting in January. So I was in shock because my dream had come true. I had been pushing promoters for a racing series for years, and my dream had finally come true, and I couldn't be there in January because I had committed to Chevrolet. So the TNT series got started. We weren't even able to partake in it January, February, and March. As soon as we got done with our commitment to Chevrolet, we jumped over to TNT and started racing. So I was a third of the way through the season when we started. And so I drove the first two races. My dream had come true. My dream truck I'd finished, and it was performing better than I even expected it to. But I realized suddenly that in the years that had passed, as the business had grown, I wasn't a good race driver. I came from drag racing. I knew how to race vehicles, but the business was so big, I had so much on my mind, I wasn't a good driver anymore. And a driver has to have one thing on his mind, and that's driving and winning. And so I quickly, after two races, my dream come true, and I had to give it up, but I turned it over to Rod, and that was probably the best move I made in my business career, because Rod came out and won that championship for me in 1988 with the truck. I don't believe I would have won the championship with me driving.
So, you know, and during that season, like you said, you missed about a third of the start. You caught up very quickly in the points. You started winning races. Yeah. Rod was really extremely aggressive with the truck. You were racing. Really, Bigfoot was your competition. They were the leader. Rich Hoosier was the driver in Bigfoot 4, that's right. Which was obviously a really good truck too. And you guys went all the way down to the end, and you won it in dramatic fashion. Yeah,
the last race of the season was a two race weekend in Louisville, the home of TNT Motorsports. And the first night it came down to Bigfoot and USA-1 in the final, and if we won the final that night, we would have locked up enough points to win the championship. And Bigfoot left on him. Surprised me, actually. That didn't happen very often, but Rich left on him, but it was a very short track indoors. But in the air over the cars, Rod had enough momentum to pass him and win the race. Ironically, that was the first time the truck crashed. It wasn't a major crash. It broke a suspension part on the left front and laid over on the left side. But he won the race, locked up the championship. We worked all night to get the truck put back together so we could come back the next night, even though we didn't have to, but we had won it. And it was really, really neat that it was won in the final against Bigfoot.
We went through the shop, and you got a truck we talked about briefly that you kind of started building. The industry was developing really quickly. The trucks were moving, and like you said, it started with baby steps, crawling over the cars. You started racing. By the end of that season, you're going all out. 89, you guys were jumping 12 cars, jumping 14 cars, stuff that you never really dreamed of. You started building another truck, and then the industry that took another advancement, and you kind of put it on hold. Tell us about the truck you had in there that you had plans for.
Well, the truck you're talking about is the one-piece fiberglass body, much like a funny car in drag racing. It was a truck I started building immediately after winning the championship in the fall of '88, and my intention was to have it done by as early as possible in '89 and switch Rod over to that when it got done. During that time period, during the first couple of months of racing the TNT series indoors, which would have been January, February, March, whatever, TNT started changing some things and orienting more towards the showbiz end of it as opposed to the true racing end of it that I wanted to see. So I put that truck on hold. I didn't want to finish a race truck if I didn't know where the racing sport was going to go. And so I spent the next few months, I call it politicking, trying to keep the sport going in a racing direction. And by the time later that summer, when it should have been done, by that time Bigfoot had developed the new Bigfoot 8 truck at that time, a full tube chassis truck. And that truck was pretty much outdated before it ever got done. So it's been sitting there for 30 plus years. My intent at one point was if I needed an extra truck for display and exhibition purposes, I was going to finish it for that. But there's never been a monetary value or reason to finish it. I haven't had the need for it. I couldn't make money with it. So it's, like I say, I call it the missing link, and a lot of the fans that visit here seem to get more interest in that than some of the other trucks around here.
Well, we appreciate everything you've done with the monster truck industry, the USA-1, the 70 Chevy, the new JConcepts body, the 88 National Championship. So amazing, the missing link, and giving us the tour here today and working with us on this new body project. And if anybody wants to know about USA-1, talk to us a little bit about where they can see it on the website or Facebook or in person with Roger.
Well, obviously Roger Gauger is running the new USA race truck. It's his truck running under my license with a USA-1 body on it, and now the last 2 years with a retro 70 body on it like this one. But it's his truck. He runs under my license, and it's been a fantastic relationship for I think 6 years now. So you can see him pretty much regionally in southern Indiana, Illinois, Ohio area. But other than that, fans are welcome to visit here at USA-1 anytime they want.
It was Bigfoot that battled USA-1 throughout '88 and pushed America's truck to the limit in this race. Here's how our TV commentators saw it.
For the national championship in one run, Chevrolet and Ford. Who's it going to be?